She carried one baby on her hip and another in her arms, but when she whispered, "You're not alone," his broken heart finally believed it. The morning sun filtered weakly through the thin clouds over Dry Creek, a small town too quiet for the kind of pain Calder Bunn carried in his chest. Dust clung to his boots and the edge of his coat as he walked down the main street. One baby rested against his hip, and the other lay cradled in his arm. His hat shaded his eyes, but everyone could see the lines of exhaustion carved into his face. The Barbies stirred, and one let out a soft cry that echoed against the wooden storefronts. Calder hesitated for a moment but kept going. His back ached from sleepless nights, his hands trembled from hard work and too little food. He reached the general store, nudged the door open with his shoulder, and stepped inside. Mrs. Delahart looked up from the counter. "Morning, Calder," she said gently, her voice caught between sympathy and surprise. "You're early again." Calder nodded, adjusting the baby in his arm. "Need milk, and maybe some oats if you still got any." She glanced at the shelves, "Running low, but I'll check." As she walked away, the door opened again. A young woman stepped in, her hair tucked beneath a simple straw hat. Maeve Holeys had only been in Dry Creek a few weeks. Most people knew she worked odd jobs to pay off the debts her late father left behind, but Calder had never really noticed her until now. Maeve froze at the sight. A rugged man, tall and worn, holding two Barbies as if they were the only thing he had left in the world. Their little faces were red from crying, his shirt was wrinkled and stained with milk, and something about the picture stopped her cold. "Would you like me to hold one?" she asked quietly. Calder blinked, unsure he'd heard correctly. "I said," she repeated, stepping closer, "I can hold one while you shop if you'd like." He hesitated, searching her face for any hint of mockery, but all he found was warmth. After a moment, he nodded, lifting the smaller baby, the little girl, and placing her gently into Maeve's arms. Maeve held her as though she'd done it all her life, moving slowly until the baby's crying softened. "She's beautiful," she whispered. Calder looked away. "Looks like her mother," he murmured. Mrs. Hart returned with a few bottles and a small sack. "This is what's left. Need credit again, Calder." He reached into his coat and pulled out a few coins. "I'll pay." His voice was firm, but his gaze dropped. That morning he'd sold another saddle just to cover basic necessities. Maeve pretended she hadn't noticed. She watched him pack the items into a bag, every movement slow, careful, as though each action cost more strength than he had. Outside, the midday sun baked the street. Calder headed toward the livery, but Maeve's voice stopped him. "Wait!" He turned, adjusting the Barbies again, exhaustion etched deep in his features. "Are you walking all the way to your ranch?" "Horse threw a shoe yesterday, not worth the risk until it's fixed." Maeve hesitated, then tightened her hat. "Let me walk with you. The road is long, and I could use some fresh air." Calder frowned. "It's not an easy walk, miss. Lots of dust, lots of sun, not much to see." "I don't mind," she replied calmly. "Sometimes silence is exactly what a person needs." Something in her tone stopped him. After a moment, he nodded, "As you wish." They walked the dusty trail together, a man weighed down by grief and two tiny lives, and a woman carrying her own quiet sorrows. The wind brushed through the dry grass, whispering along the open land. A mile from town, Calder paused beside an old fence. He sat on a fallen beam, shifting the Barbies carefully as Maeve crouched beside him. "How long has it been since you've rested?" she asked gently. "Resting doesn't change much," he murmured. "They wake every few hours, cry through the night, can't even remember what day it is." Maeve smiled faintly, brushing dust from the baby's cheek. "You're doing more than most could, Mr. Bunn." He actually looked at her then, really looked. "You already heard my story from the town." She shook her head. "I don't listen to gossip." He seemed surprised. "Most people do." "People forget what kindness sounds like," she replied softly. They sat a while in peaceful silence, the wind carrying the smell of warm earth around them. Calder cleared his throat. Their mother died right after the smallest was born. Fever took her quick. Been trying to keep going, but... His voice cracked, and he turned away. It's not easy raising two Barbies when you can barely stand yourself. Maeve's expression softened, her heart tightening. You don't have to do it alone, she whispered. He looked at her, fear and gratitude mixing in his eyes. You don't owe me anything, miss. I know, she said gently, but maybe helping isn't about owing. They continued toward the ranch. At last, the modest cabin came into view, surrounded by tired fencing and open land. Thanks for walking with me, Calder said quietly at the gate. Didn't mean to trouble you. You didn't, she replied softly. It was nice. He nodded, pulling one of the Barbies closer. You're kind, Miss Holies. Most people just stare. Her smile warmed. Let them stare, they don't know what they're missing. Calder watched her leave down the road, the breeze lifting the edge of her dress, and for the first time in months, he felt something other than hurt. He felt hope. The next morning was grey and still over the Bunn Ranch. The roosters hadn't begun to crow when Calder was already awake, packing with the twins in his arms. The wood stove crackled faintly, barely warming the room. He looked down at his daughters. Myra and Jun. Myra had her mother's green eyes, and Jun, the smallest, had the same tiny mole her mother used to hide behind a smile. The thought strung in that old, deep way grief never truly leaves. He kissed their foreheads. You two are the reason I'm still standing, he whispered. He fed the chickens, drew water from the well, prepared bottles, usually with just one hand. He moved slowly, steady, because if he stopped even one moment, he might start thinking. He didn't notice the rider climbing the dusty road until he heard the soft clop of hooves. He shielded his eyes. The figure was slim, wearing a blue dress and a small hat. When she drew closer, his chest tightened. It was Maeve Holies. She dismounted gracefully, brushing dust from her skirt. Didn't see you at the smithy, she said lightly, so I brought something myself. She held a basket. Calder blinked. What's that? Some bread, a jar of stew, a little milk. Thought you could use it. I can't accept that, Miss Holies. I'll pay you when. It's not for sale, she interrupted softly. It's kindness. Her words hit harder than he expected. I'm not used to people doing things like that. Then maybe it's time that changed. He swallowed, took the basket awkwardly with one arm while holding Myra against his shoulder. She's growing fast, Maeve said, touching the baby's cheek. Too fast, he murmured. Feels like if I blink, I'll miss it. Maeve hesitated. Do you want me to stay a while? I could help feed them. He froze. Such a simple offer, but deeper than anything anyone had given him since Lydia died. You don't need to. I want to, she said softly. And he couldn't refuse. For the first time in months, someone else crossed the quiet threshold of that lonely cabin. They fed the girls together. Maeve laughed softly when Jun made a mess with her milk. Calder tried not to notice how her laugh warmed the room, how the scent of her soap lingered in the air. She moved with a calmness that felt natural, right. You're good with them, he said quietly. Children like peace, she replied. They know when someone's heart is calm. He gave a small, tired smile. They won't get much of that from me. She met his eyes. You carry pain, Mr. Bunn. That's not weakness. It's love waiting for somewhere to go. The words sank deep. When the twins fell asleep, Maeve tucked them carefully into their cradle. Only the wind and their little breaths filled the room. Calder leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You must think I'm pathetic, he said. She turned sharply. Why would I think that? A man who barely manages 2 Barbies, can't keep a house in order, can't even get a horse shod in time. She stepped closer, her voice steady. A man who refuses to give up is not pathetic, he's brave. For a moment, they were close enough for him to smell the faint lavender of her hair ribbon. The air felt alive between them. He stepped back, breaking the tension. I should get back to the barn. She nodded. I'll tidy up before I go. He hesitated, then whispered, thank you. That evening after she left, Calder stood by the fence staring at his land. Her presence still lingered, the smell of her bread, the blankets she'd folded neatly, the small note she left on the table. It read, "You're not alone, Em." He read it over and over until the words blurred. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel completely empty. Days passed. When the fever hit the twins, Calder nearly broke. Maeve arrived soaked from the storm, mud on her boots, determination in her eyes. She brewed willowbark tea with honey, cooled their foreheads, held them through their cries until the fever eased and the coughing softened. I thought I'd lose them too, he whispered. You didn't, she said gently. You fought for them, that's what parents do. That night, after the storm quieted, they stood on the porch together. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. I used to think this land was cursed, he said softly. Why? Because every time I looked out there, all I could see was what I lost. She looked at the same horizon. And now, he breathed deeply. Now I see what I still have. Weeks became months, the girls grew stronger. The ranch healed. And laughter returned, like it had been waiting patiently for its time. One afternoon, Calder found Maeve sitting under the large cottonwood by the creek. Her dress fluttered in the breeze, and the twins crawled around her, clinging to her skirt and giggling. The sight tightened his heart, but this time in a way that felt alive. You've done more for this ranch than anyone since Lydia, he said. I didn't do it for the ranch, she replied softly. I did it for you and for them. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You fix things that can't be nailed or sewn, Maeve Holies. And you carry more than any man should, she whispered. They held each other's gaze, the air warm with something unspoken. When the sheriff rode by later that day, he dismounted with a grin. Heard you got good company these days, Bun. Calder smirked, guess I do. The sheriff tipped his hat to Maeve. About time, folks said this ranch needed a woman's touch again. She laughed, I'm sure they did, Sheriff. He winked, don't mind the gossip, people just like happy endings. After he rode off, the porch fell quiet again. The sun dipped low, bathing the land in gold. You know, Maeve said, soon I might go stay with my aunt. She's expecting me. The thought hit Calder harder than he expected. He looked at the twins sleeping nearby, then back at her. What if I asked you to stay? She blinked, stay. You've brought life back to this home, Maeve. I can't imagine it without you. She stared at him, breath catching. Are you sure, Calder? You already lost once. I don't want to be a ghost in someone else's story. He took her hand gently. You're no ghost. You're the reason my story isn't over. Her eyes filled with tears. Do you mean it? Every word. Under the crimson sky, Maeve rested her head on his shoulder. The twins fussed softly, and Calder wrapped his arm around all three of them, everything he once thought he'd lost. Before blowing out the lantern that night, Maeve whispered, You're not alone, Calder Bun, not anymore. And for the first time since Lydia's death, he believed it. The wind carried the twins' laughter, the warmth of two hearts learning to trust again, and the quiet promise that love, even the softest kind, can bloom in the dustiest corners of the West. The cowboy who once walked with sorrow at his side now walked with hope and a family reborn from kindness. This is how love returned to the Bun Ranch, not with grand gestures, but with quiet strength, gentle hands, and a whisper that healed a cowboy's soul. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of courage, love, and second chances in the Old West. And tell us in the comments, would you have trusted love again if you were Calder?